Today I'm headed down to the first ever Autopia 2099, a show dedicated to all forms of electrified transportation. Let's go. So I'm headed down to the first ever Autopia 2099 show, where we should be able to see a whole bunch of new electric vehicles, some electric motorcycles, some brand new Teslas, maybe some Porsches, and some home-built EV swaps. I'm actually part of the team that's putting on this show, so I gotta get down there early to set everything up. But I'm super excited about sharing this enthusiasm of electrified vehicles with everybody that shows up. And Audi graciously loaned me this luxurious e-tron SUV to drive down there to keep my carbon footprint to a minimum. Now, if you know me, you're aware that I'm a huge fan of the cars from the 80s and 90s, but I'm also very interested to find out where the automotive world is headed. I know a lot of people are on the fence about electric cars and EV swaps, but I think there's a lot to get excited about. So let's see what we can find down there. Of course, the Taycan's behind me. There's Volkswagen ID4s that were in the Rebel Rally. Got this really awesome lowered Tesla Model 3 with a whole bunch of modifications. Acura NSX. Look at this Jag, it's ridiculous. This Jag is out of control. I need to find the owner of this car to talk to them. There's an electric converted Corvair. It's just ridiculous. There's two Rivians over there. Tons of motorcycles. Nissan's got a huge presence here. Livewire's got a huge presence here. There's electric bicycles, there's electric skateboards. Inside there's a few more converted cars, a Volkswagen Bus, a Volkswagen Bug. There's so much stuff to look at. I can't wait to talk to everybody about these cars. 1950 Jaguar Mark V. I got a Tesla Model 3 powertrain. It's got the battery, the motor, got the brake booster, a few other things. Kind of shoved it all in there. I started working on it about 10 months ago. I just last night finally got the bumpers, the fender, and the hood on.
Last night?
So the exterior is not done, but it's together.
Together,
Still
yes.
got a lot of work. The interior is totally, that's the next big project.
What inspired this project?
Well, I've always wanted to do an electric swap. I used to work for Tesla. I've wanted to electric swap a Tesla into an old car, you know, for a decade now. I was kind of looking for an old like Bentley or Rolls Royce or something of this style with the big swooping fenders and the long hood. And I found this one. It was in great condition. It's really hard to find a car that's 70 years old that's in restorable condition. They're usually either like rusted piles of junk or already restored, sometimes poorly. So I found this one, looked awesome. It's perfect style. Started ripping stuff apart. Wasn't exactly sure how I was going to make it work, but I figured I'd probably figure it out along the way. A lot of people doing swaps on Teslas are doing the Model S and X. This is Model 3, so it's a little bit newer, so it's a little bit different, a little bit harder to figure out how to control everything. The battery modules are much bigger. I had to chop it. There's this huge X brace in the frame. I had to chop that all out to get the batteries in, so lost a little bit of torsional rigidity there, but I'm not taking it to a racetrack, so it should be fine.
What is your background? Is it an engineering background?
Yep.
Okay, so obviously that probably helped you in this process a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Would you recommend this type of project for somebody that has never dealt with an electric swap before?
If you've wrenched on a few things, it's not that much different. You just got to be willing to learn and realize that there's going to be some stuff that you're not going to be able to figure out right off the bat and have to dig into it, talk to some people, plug into the network, and yeah, you can figure it out.
Okay.
Might take a little bit longer, but...
In terms of all of the parts and pieces that were used to make this conversion, is it all Tesla?
The battery controller, DC-DC, the power conversion system, the motor, the entire rear subframe, suspension, brakes in the rear are all Tesla. The brake booster's Tesla. Got power steering from a Toyota Prius, and then like all the front suspension is sort of aftermarket Mustang 2 stuff. So
yeah,
it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, but most of the powertrain, all of the drivetrain is Tesla. Down there you can see the motor, entire subframe from the Model 3. The only thing I changed were I put coilovers on there because I couldn't fit the original suspension.
How is it to drive?
Well, so I've got a total of about 15 miles on it.
Okay. You just finished it, literally.
Yeah, I've taken this is the second place I've taken it. I don't have any of the seals in it, and I don't have, there's actually a hole from the back. I don't have the back seat. There's a hole through the trunk and then a hole in the trunk, so it's very noisy right now.
Okay.
It's comfortable enough, I would say. It's got good pickup and go. It's got 330 horsepower. Originally it had like 85, so a little bit of an upgrade there.
It's super unique, and I'm looking forward to the next Autopia show when you've got a few more body panels on it. You don't have a hole in the
interior, maybe. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, thanks so much for bringing it to the show. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
'73 standard Beetle. Had the car for close to 11 years now. It's been electric for about 4. But everything you see on the body, chopped roof, stretched suspension, just kind of the hot rod thing, but with the German car. And then the electric just made it more fun. It made it more usable, and it was a nice first try at kind of doing it.
This was your first try doing this? Was your first conversion?
Yeah.
How did that conversion process go for you?
There are a lot of really helpful people on the internet.
Okay.
A lot of really helpful shops that you can source pretty much anything you want in the world, right? I highly recommend it to give it a shot. My gosh.
Do you have an engineering background or anything like that, or a mechanical background? I'm kind of curious, like how difficult would you say a process like this is?
Not formally educated. An engineering background.
Sure.
But I think with enough time staring at prints, you can figure it out.
Okay. Yeah. Have you always been into Beetles?
No, actually. Kind of cut my teeth in the Honda world. Just did a lot of early 90s Hondas. So yeah, mechanically that's where I figured things out. But the VW thing was always on the bucket list. The hot rod thing was on a bucket list. The EV thing was on a bucket list. So I just kind of, same car, knocked them all out.
Sure, exactly. When you bought this car, did you have the intention to do an EV conversion for this particular one?
No. Rebuilt the motor actually. Rebuilt 1600 factory dual port motor. Drove it like that for a long time, but there was a period where I didn't drive the car a lot because you would smell like exhaust, smell like gas. It really wasn't appealing to drive that much, and I was on the cusp of selling it. My wife convinced me to not sell it, and my thought was the only way to really move forward with it was to do something different, right? And then EV came up, and I was like, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, that's awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about the technical details of the swap?
So AC50 motor with 5 Tesla packs. So out of P85, that's 124-ish volts fully charged. The question's always like range, just a touch over 100 miles of range on a nice easy day. Probably triple the torque this factory, and it's like 100 and I think it's rated like 120-ish or something like that pound-feet of torque. But it's all mated to the factory transaxle. So factory suspension, geometry at least, lowered. Factory clutch, so 4-speed with a reverse. I do have an electric reverse, but sometimes it's nice just to jam it in reverse.
Sure.
More authentic, right? It's very much comfortable on the highway. 2,600 RPM at 60 miles per hour. So you just get wind noise off the rack. And I drove on the highway to get here. And generally just right lane, take it easy, and
it's awesome.
Very drivable.
So you said it has a 4-speed. So how many gears do you actually use? Because I've seen some people with manuals in them, they only use like the first 2 gears or something.
Literally don't use the first gear unless you just want to do something silly.
Yeah.
Second and third gear is really all you need. On the highway, I put it into 4th just to kind of quiet it all down. But you really only need 2 and 3. It's the fun gear and it's the eco gear is 1 and 4.
This is our second EV. This is a 2002 RAV4 EV, one of the 339 ever offered for sale to the public. So it is one of very few that were actually ever sold. Most were leased. This one was actually purchased by us, originally brand new, my wife and I. We now have 118,000 miles on it. It is an all factory Toyota EV.
So there's no Tesla connection in here?
There's no Tesla connection. There's 100% Toyota developed and derived. Batteries were developed in the mid-1990s. It's a nickel metal hydride pack, 26 kilowatt hours. It has 24 EV95 batteries in it, all on the bottom of the car. Very low center of gravity, but they designed this car to really mimic the RAV4 gas version of this vehicle. Even though this is a 2002, it's using the body of the Gen 1 RAVs, because all the original RAVs, even though in 2001 Toyota redesigned the RAV4 EV, this is a 2002, it's the older body style. It's the same as the 1996 to 2000 gas version body. except that they changed a lot of things on it. This has ceramic aluminum disc brakes, the front. It has a heated windshield system, which will defrost the windshield like that. There's a thin film of metal in there, and it puts 300 volts worth of power, and it defrosts the windows instantly. It has regenerative braking. It has induction charging. This actually has front and rear heated seats.
That's a pretty big deal for
2002.
Yeah.
That's just insane.
Yeah.
This is, a part of automotive history. We have 118,000 miles on it. We drive it 5 days a week. It's still a daily driver. Amazing technology that was in this car, using an air-cooled nickel metal hydride pack.
Obviously, you're an early adopter. Have you always been interested in electric cars?
Well, I've always been into cars. I've owned muscle cars and race cars. I still own a 600 horsepower turbocharged beast. But for daily driving, I test drove an EV1 back in '96. 15 seconds out of the showroom floor, my life changed. I realized this is the future, and I became obsessed. We ended up leasing a Honda EV Plus, which we had for 5 years. There's actually a picture of it in Who Killed the Electric Car. It was a great car, we loved it, but they pried it out of our hands at the end of December 2003. In the meantime, we got on the list to buy one of these. This one, like I said, still drive it every day. It's all original paint.
It's in really good shape.
Thank you. The only thing we've done was tint the windows.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's really a very vintage, original car.
Yeah, so I'm curious, you drive it all the time.
Yep.
How much range is still left on these batteries?
It was rated as an 80 to 100 mile car.
Okay.
We could always get 100 miles. We're getting about 80 miles if we really push it, but we try not to push it these days, where I'm trying to keep this thing alive for as long as possible, but it still works for going to getting groceries and taking the kids to school and all that kind of stuff. It works for normal driving, but there's no small paddle induction charger. This is the way that you plug it in with sort of a paddle. It's not the J1772 of today.
Yep.
This was early technology. So the technology that was used for this doesn't exist on the road anymore. They've removed all the chargers that used to exist. There used to be a bunch at LAX. There used to be all over the place. They're all gone now. I don't usually take it all that far away, although I did drive it a good distance yesterday. But yeah, it's just a great daily driver. And it needs to be driven. It will be bad for the car if it just sits. So we actually want to exercise it. And fortunately, we have a lot of places we need to go in a short range. So it worked out well.
Yeah.
Well, this is a Model 3, 2020. I'm fully converted to like almost like a race car. Let's start from the front.
Sure.
Front is a whole new bumper from Porsche GT3 custom built. The front, I have the air system for the suspension, so I can raise the car up and down when I go up to my driveway, because it's a little steep, so I can raise the car up. Right now I'm airing down, but with this car, everything controlled by phone, so I can raise it up if I want. So something like this, I can raise the car up. The body kit is made by IMP Performance. It's a wide body kit, carbon fibers. The interior is all custom made, from the steering wheel to the display to all the carbon fiber trims and everything, and then the seat cover, all custom.
So tell me a little bit about the sounds that you got going with this car.
The sound is the electronic exhaust that I have. When I drive, I can turn it on so people can hear me. Because Tesla is quiet when we go to the crowded place. It's kind of dangerous. It has a different sound. It has like 8 different sounds. For now, I just use like a V8.
Yeah, V8
sounds right now, yes.
Okay.
But I can actually change it like to Ferrari. Phone, so if I want to rev it, I can do it like that. Yeah. And then it linked to my car, so when I drive, it accelerates with my pedals.
So does it hook to the OBD too, or something?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it raises up and down, and then it actually is shift gear too.
You probably get a lot of attention in this car, wouldn't you say?
Yes, a little bit, but the most is because of the sound.
Okay.
Because anytime I'm driving to like a car show, people hear it and they say Tesla. But it's actually for safety, because like I say, it's so quiet when you drive into the crowded places. With the exhaust, people can hear you, and they don't walk in front of your car or things like that. Yeah.
That's cool.
We have here my 1962 Chevrolet Corvair. My day job is an engineer with General Motors Corporate, and we have what the original Electrovair. So GM actually had built this car back in the 60s as electric, and I kind of had like this aha moment. I've always been an ICE guy, die hard, like LS conversions, you name it. But that car, this thing had an 80-mile range in 1965, and it kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, that's what the Nissan Leaf had in 2010. And I'm like, okay, so this is nothing to do with feasibility, everything to do with consumer mindset. And I just had to move forward from that principle, knowing that I wanted to build something that nobody else really had. And that's what was so cool and taboo about electric. But now it's really starting to open up into a bigger opportunity for us. This car specifically is coupled with what's called a Hyper 9. It's from a company called NetGain. It's about 173 foot-pounds of torque, nominal voltage of about 96 volts. I'm running Model S batteries in the front end of the car of the 5.3 kilowatt hour packs up there. Brings me up to about 26 kilowatt hours. I get about 4 miles per kilowatt hour, so I get roughly 100 miles of range is what I like to tell people. It can be way worse than that. It can be better, but that's about average. The coolest part about this car though, and one of my favorite things, is that it's actually still coupled to the 4-speed manual transmission.
Oh, cool.
And you hear the adage a lot of people that don't understand the EV culture. They're like, oh, it's a golf cart. You built a golf cart. I have a manual transmission that I get to shift with this. I am engaged, I'm connected to my machinery. I actually get to enjoy it dynamically. I get to hear the gears wind up. And yeah, I don't have to stop at a gas station. I get to charge it at home every night. And 100 miles of range doesn't sound as feasible, but it's one of those things that once you get it and you actually own one of these cars, you're like, this is totally doable. We didn't have to do too much with the suspension. I had to add in heavier duty springs to support the 300 pounds of battery that are in the front. The back I actually had to cut to make it level so that we're actually a little bit more balanced. Weight distribution's about 50-50, so it's a lot better driving of a car than it was when it was a gas car. Because when it was a gas car, all the weight was in the rear of the vehicle. And if you talk to anybody that used to have these, they would throw like cement bags and things like that into the front of it to try to balance it out. This thing drives so much better as an electric vehicle. I always tell people it's the car that COVID built, because it was gas last year when I ripped it all apart. And this thing is a gas car. It was finicky. You had to adjust stuff on it all the time to make it run right. We've put over 4,000 miles on it in this last year, just as our weekend show-going car. And we've had to do like almost no adjustments other than like software corrections. Still 4-wheel drummed brake built into it, but we're running full regenerative braking. So we have a pressure sensor on the front brake line that helps us be a little bit more dynamic with our driving. It drives like it has power brakes, which for a car that's 4-wheel drum that felt like it was going to kill you beforehand, this is night and day. Total night and day difference for us. But other than that, this is her in her glory.
Do you think that somebody without an engineering background can actually accomplish something like this? How difficult was this?
110%. Somebody of basic understanding of electricity and mechanical principles could very easily get into a position to be able to put something like this together for themselves. There's a bunch of other companies out there that have already tried to remove some of the taboo away from high voltage that everybody's afraid of. They're all out there building systems that are more user-friendly for the consumer that's after. That's something that they're terrified they're going to kill themselves on. This is considered a low voltage system. This thing running at 126 volts fully charged. If you get shocked by this, very unlikely that it's actually going to kill you. Very safe. There are other higher voltage systems that we have to take other precautions on. If you want to go fast, then yeah, we need to talk safety. But if you want to be reasonable, have a low voltage system that's moderately safe as far as an assembly, they're very easy to do for somebody that has a little bit of basic understanding of electrical and mechanical principles.
Sure. So have you always been into Corvairs?
I love weird cars.
Okay.
Being diehard GM, of course, the Corvettes and the Camaros and like all these high-end cars, but I call them the belly buttons of the car world because everybody's got one. The Corvair had a lot of taboo with what happened with Ralph Nader, and it was the car that GM built to compete with Volkswagen, and it really was just a big flop of a car in a lot of ways. And because of that, it really makes it cool in its own accord for what it is. And there's a lot of purists out there still trying to keep these things kicking down the road. And the Corvair is just such a unique and controversial car in its time that how could you not want one? No, awesome. I totally love it. And of course, being a Corvair, like it's got the charge port in the fender, which is like perfect. What most every other car out here has, is somewhere local like that. It just fits the flow of the car to be electric. Like you just kind of had to do it.
So this is Nissan's new all-electric crossover. Hopefully you guys are already familiar with the Nissan Leaf. The upgrades here would be size, for sure. 87 kilowatt hour battery, so up to a 300-mile range. We also have the option for 2 motors and all-wheel drive. So standard, you're looking at single motor, front-wheel drive, range up to 300 miles. If you go dual motor, all-wheel drive, you're looking at around 389 horsepower and about 443 pound-feet of torque. So it's got some serious performance, 0 to 60 in about 4.8 seconds for those dual motor, all-wheel drive versions. So one of the huge points about technology with the new Ariya is ProPilot Assist 2.0. So essentially our version 1.0, which we have in a lot of the Nissan vehicles that are out today, is essentially an intelligent cruise system with lane keep assist. But 2.0 goes beyond that to where you can go hands-free on the highway. It will actually change lanes for you, and there's also a new ProPilot Assist park function that will take you into your parking space hands-free.
And about when will this be available, do you think?
Sure, reservations are live now at nissanusa.com/Ariya/reserve. They will be coming out in the fall of 22.
All right, the show is starting to clear out. All of these EVs are quietly leaving the premises. It was so great to see all the enthusiasm about electric cars, to really dispel some of the myths about electric cars and talk to some people who have done some really insane swaps. I definitely have a desire to do an EV swap. I still don't feel like I'm capable of doing something like that, but maybe I'll actually build up the confidence to finally do it. Yeah, so I'm totally looking forward to helping put on another one of these events. Hopefully this is the first of many Autopia events. All right, I think that's gonna be it for me for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you can get notified of all my new car reviews, used car reviews, updates on my fleet of weird 80s and 90s vehicles, and maybe at some point a video about me trying to EV swap a Ford Probe. I don't know, probably a terrible idea, but I might have to give it a shot. All right, thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.